You are tuned in to a new episode of Testimony Tuesday with Timothy Baker on the Faithful Sinners. Welcome back, friends, to Testimony Tuesday on the Faithful Sinners podcast, where imperfect stories meet perfect grace. My name is Timothy Baker, and I am going to share some background stories of my life in alignment with what our Sinspired Sunday topic was about, which was divorce and the impact it has on the spouses and especially the children. Now, I'm going to start off with, I'm in the midst of going through a divorce right now. Um, it is not an easy situation, especially having three younger children, all under the age of 16. But I want to jump back to the beginning of things. I am in my second marriage, to be quite honest. Got married when I was way too young. Got married when I was in the Navy, 19 years of age. My dad was telling me at that time, don't do it. You're making a big mistake. But of course, I'm a grown man. I'm 19 years old. I can make my own decisions and know what's best for me. But quite honestly, that wasn't the truth. It was not the right time. I was not anywhere near grown up enough to make those types of commitments. So I unfortunately went through a struggle and ultimately a failed marriage following coming back from being deployed during Desert Storm. But there's another whole story in that in itself. So when I met my most recent ex-wife, I was in a position where, I knew I didn't want to be alone, but at the same time, I wasn't really in that feeling of like I was way back when I was 19 of, oh my gosh, I can't live without this woman. I absolutely need to be married to this woman. I ended up, uh, in my own opinion, getting married more out of what I felt was an obligation and a duty because we had been together at that point in time for going on 5 years. And she had made a comment at one point during our relationship that if things are progressing and you're together for that long of a time, then maybe it's not the right situation. But I wasn't ready to let go. So I just decided to, as some would say, bite the bullet and move forward. Wrong decision for sure. Nobody should ever get married out of a feeling of obligation or a sense of duty. But again, I wasn't connected really strong with my faith and was more just kind of doing things out of what I felt to be a sense of duty or the right thing. But I did share in advance of getting married what I will term as my shallow Hal moment. If you've seen that movie, you'll get the reference. But I had shared very clearly two things that if they occurred, no matter how long or who I was married to, that should those two things occur, that I wasn't going to be there, that I would be disconnected. I would no longer feel an obligation, and things would probably turn for the worse. But I also have to admit that my wife was, she was young at the time when she had come out to meet with me. I had moved from the East Coast into Colorado. 6 months later, she traversed the country and came out to live with me. And then, unfortunately, wasn't treated very nicely by my family that was there. And of course, for a young girl who's made such a large commitment to travel across the country against the best desires of her own family, she, in her own right, probably felt a sense of obligation to make things work, to make sure that she wasn't going back with tail between her legs. So, having a challenge of not getting the support from what should have been her stepmom, or not, yeah, I guess her stepmom, or mother in law, sorry, for not getting the support of her mother in law, made it very difficult on a young girl. And more importantly, it created a lot of rifts in our relationship and our connections. Now, granted, it takes two to tango. So I'm not going to say that everything was, on my mom's fault. But at the same time, she was the elder in the situation and should have taken the high road. But bygones are bygones. That's just the way things are. But it did cause us to have some challenges in our relationship that didn't need to be there. And I know for a fact we're just a few more of the pavers on the road to our destruction. But we continued moving forward. And a few years into our marriage, I had all of a sudden the best thing in my life, which was my little girl. I have always wanted a daughter. And when she came into the picture, I was so overjoyed. It was unbelievable. Um, I've got pictures of her dancing with me at the age of 2 or 3. Her and I were part of a camping group together when she was real little. So, I had this little love, this little bundle of joy that I was so infatuated with. Um, that I just kind of lost sight of what was going on in our or in my marriage at that point. Now, granted, I also was not living the best life. I had addictions that were challenging for me, but they didn't keep me from working. They didn't keep me from doing the things that I needed to do. I was engaged in church, but I wasn't a part of it in my heart. So that uh, didn't help overcome some of the challenges and addictions that were going on. So things were rocky, and I know I could have been better. But around that time is when suddenly those two moments that I'd mentioned of shallow hell moments started to emerge. And I actually was point blank and said, do you remember us having this conversation and how I would respond should these things occur? But it apparently didn't matter um, because it wasn't a desire of hers to make adjustments and try to work together to overcome those things. It was just, this is how it is, and deal with it or don't. Um, but our first son came along shortly after, 3 years later, of our daughter being in the picture, um, which I absolutely was enthralled to have my first little boy. But our connection as a married couple was continuing to grow farther and farther apart. Now, at that point, we started to not really have real physical intimacy or emotional connections. But somehow, 3 years after that, our second son came into the picture. Now, most definitely, after he arrived, that is when the true disconnect started to occur. There was no longer a physical relationship. There was no longer emotional relationships. And as far as connections, there were many times I felt that I was being talked about behind my back with her own mom, which later proved to be true. Not even in just there, but in public settings. I heard from several different people how things were being said about me when I wasn't directly present, and that's never good. If you got something to say to somebody, you say it to them. You tell them straight up. Otherwise, keep your opinions to yourself, is how we're supposed to live. But that wasn't the case. I didn't know it at the time. It wasn't until after we separated that I heard some of the things that were being said about me. So, it kind of then at that point validated our separation. Um, but again, I felt like I was in that relationship uh, to make sure that there was some adherence to the duty as being a father to these three beautiful young children. So I had made many adjustments. I even made many offers and ways for us to lessen the impact on these children as um, their parents had begun their walk of separate directions. But none of those things were important to her, to my ex. It was more important in my mind for her to feel like she was winning something or being justified in a financial means to uh, continue on with a more aggressive separation, which sadly has impacted the children way more than it ever needed to have. These children now have less financial support available to them because of the well over 70 some $1,000 that have been spent and wasted on attorneys. And the process still isn't even over. Um, so as far as these kids, there's financial opportunities that could have been afforded to them. There were connection opportunities that could have been available to them. And then even for my ex, there would have been other support available for her with maintenance of the property and everything else that she had now had to take on as a part of being a single parent, still operating the same home with which we lived. But I look at it in this manner now is I'm very challenged with the disconnect I have with the kids, but I trust in the Lord that He will find a way to right this ship with my relationship with them. Um, I have confidence, contentment in the place that I'm at, just because I know it's God's will that things are the way they are. Are they the way that I would like them to be? Absolutely not. But I move forward, and it's a challenging situation for sure. But that's kind of the reality of the situation I'm in. So I hope that this is something that's been an inspiration for you. And just remember that your voice is what builds and strengthens this community. So I do thank you very much for tuning into this episode of Testimony Tuesday on the Faithful Sinners podcast. Um, if this message has challenged you or encouraged you or woke something up inside of you, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and share it on your own personal feed. And please make sure that you share this story with somebody else that you may know of that could use a little encouragement or some direction today. And for more inspiration, check out our other episodes on YouTube under at the Faithful Sinners or on our website where everything is connected, thefaithfulsinners.com. And don't forget, we have those devotionals out that tie into each week. And as a reminder, starting this Friday, we will begin broadcasting live the Faithful Friday episodes at 10 p.m. Eastern Time across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. This is a very exciting time for the Faithful Sinners community as we will truly be able to connect on the weekly topics or respond to comments posted during the week and also those that are posted live while we're broadcasting. So I do truly hope you will join us, join me as we take this next big step forward on our journey. And make sure to tune in at the end of the week for a noose inspired Sunday, where our topic next week will be co parenting and trust. This is the Faithful Sinners, where we don't pretend to be perfect. We just try to be better than yesterday and sin better together. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Faithful Sinners, and get more inspiration on our website, thefaithfulsinners.com.